Holy hell, are we going to have a Sovryn Tech Prime episode this week? Of course, you're not. That's not what you're hearing right now. Kind of a late night tonight. Actually recording this the day before it's going to release. This is getting recorded on September 20th, 2018, and it'll get released on September 21st, 2018. And it is your Star Trek update. But before we get into that, Amazon had like this fucking, surprise hardware event today. Whatever happened when Amazon was just, making like really cool e-readers and maybe having a little fun with tablets? Like, we'll talk all about it on the Sovryn Tech Prime episode, but these fucking Echo speakers and Echo everywhere and smart plugs and all this other horse shit. What the hell? Crazy. And I mean, it's actually, for me, it's actually been a pretty long day. Maybe not a long day necessarily initially for the most important of reasons, at least not to anyone but me. But, I'm going to share this with you. Before we have tons of Star Trek news to talk about this month. This is your September 2018, obviously, Star Trek update. And starting in October, we'll have some interesting things to talk about, I think, because, you'll find out as we get into the news why that's going to be. But yeah, no comic book reviews this month because I don't think until the following week that we're going to get that Transformers and Star Trek crossover comic. I'm not kidding. That's a real thing, and I'm fucking excited. I don't think that comes out till then, but also we're still waiting for the latest kind of Star Trek The Next Generation Terra Incognita to finish up, and we don't have any novels coming out until January, where we have the Star Trek Discovery novel about Cadet Tilly, who I assume in the novel is still Cadet Tilly, before she got promoted, in the season finale of Star Trek Discovery. But anyway, let me tell you, so I got up a little early today, okay? Now, what's early for me? Anytime before 8 o'clock is kind of early for me. Okay. I don't sleep a whole ton anyway, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I average anywhere between 4 to 6 hours a night, something like that. And that's something I really need to remedy, particularly for my own like bodybuilding goals. Like I really, really have to remedy that because I know, the gains you can get when you get a shit ton of sleep, and I'm all about the gains, baby. But anyway, speaking about the gains, I'm a big fan. I'll be honest with you about this, okay? Since we're talking genre shit here, we can talk about this. I'm a big fan of The Rock. Like, I'm a really big fan of The Rock. Have been. I was there. I was watching when he came out as Rocky Maivia in the 90s. I've been following this guy's career forever. I went and saw The Scorpion King opening night. What a sexy-ass film that was. I saw The Mummy Returns, which was technically his first appearance a year previous in a film. I love the fact that, in fact, The Rock, let's make it appertinent to the Star Trek update. The Rock was in Star Trek. He was in Star Trek Voyager. Remember the fight between him and Seven of Nine? Oh, it was fucking awesome. That was so great. He's not the only wrestler that would be in Star Trek. The Big Show would end up being in the fourth season episode of Enterprise with the Orions, which he was dynamite, looked great. But The Rock was really, that was a big deal when we were getting The Rock in, in Star Trek. So, there's some crossover there. Anyway, I really like The Rock, and I've talked about this before. In fact, I buy a lot of his gear when he comes out with new gear. I did a review of his headphones for a Patreon episode. I've bought his shoes. Here and there, things that I think that are actually practical, I'll get my hands on. So he made an announcement last week that on 9/20, which is the day that I'm recording this, he's going to have the biggest drop of his gear ever. And he has this deal with Under Armour or whatever. And trust me, I think you'll find this interesting, or maybe you won't. I don't know, but we'll get into Star Trek stuff and that you'll find interesting. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, he's, 9/20 is going to do the drop. I know how this goes because I've been there when he's done his other quote unquote drops. Like he did a Chase Greatness line. This is going to be the All Day Hustle line, whatever. And so I'm like, okay, Under Armour will put it up on their website at about 7:55 a.m. Okay, so I get up this morning to do that just to see what's going to get put out there. And this is kind of the part of an oddity here is that this is the first time where he didn't really say. Usually he tells you like a month even ahead of time of what's going to be on offer, like what you're going to be able to get. He didn't say at all what was going to be available. Like he was, there's a couple of like little ads you could watch on Instagram, kind of trailers almost that showed off a couple of interesting things. One of them being like this really cool duffel bag / backpack, which I did end up getting. But anyway, he didn't really like talk much about what he was putting out there. So I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be a surprise. I hope there's something fucking great. He was demoing, like, because he shows his workouts and everything, which I enjoy seeing those. And he always has some, I mean, I don't fall for cheesy inspirational shit, but his stuff, I mean, he's really done it. Like, he can actually talk. So I like hearing him talk. And he just has such panache. It's really enjoyable to listen to him. Even so, 20 years later since I've been watching him. But anyway, so he was like demoing this cloth that he had, that was supposed to like keep from getting wet. Like, it couldn't get wet. The wicking on it, whatever, kept it from getting wet, and it was great for the gym and all this stuff. And I think you see him wearing it a lot in his pictures. On Instagram, where he's wearing it like a bandana and so on. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, maybe that'll end up, getting put out. And, I wouldn't mind picking that up either. And of course, like I said, I didn't end up getting that bag, even though that bag, it's the only really unique, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me keep going. So I'm like, all right. So I get up, I go to Under Armour's, I get some coffee. I come down to the BDSM studio where my main computer is. And I go to the Under Armour site and have to refresh quick, and then everything's there. And nothing's sold out yet. Okay, good. There was his first pair of shoes, his first, what they call Project Rock Deltas. Now he has Project Rock Ones, which is a new shoe line, kind of signature shoe line of his. His first ones, they sold out like almost instantaneously. And I was able to get a pair of Project Rock Deltas, and there's a reason I'm not buying any Project Rock Ones, even though he did finally sell a black pair of those. Originally, they were like this weird blue, and now he has a black and a white pair. And the black ones would have been nice because the Project Rock Deltas I have are way too white for my anarchist flavor of being triple black. But anyway, so I wasn't necessarily looking for the shoes because my Project Rock Deltas still look like new, even though I beat the hell out of them, when I do a workout, and that's the only time I ever wear them. So I get up, and I'm looking, and I'm like, what is all this? Like, I'm looking around. There's nothing really. Yeah, he's got his headphones for sale again. I already have those. He's selling his shoes again with a new design. I already have a pair of rock shoes. I'm not going to, nobody works out that much that they need like a multitude of like workout shoes like that. I mean, nobody. So, fuck that. Like, I don't need those. And everything else, there's like a $250 backpack. It's not the bag that I got. That didn't cost anywhere near that. Okay. There was the bag that looked pretty cool, but then there was a backpack for like $250. I'm like, what the fuck does this backpack do that it should cost $250? It's not like whole grain leather or full grain leather or anything like that. Like, I was baffled. And then I look around at kind of everything else. And there's, some shirts and hoodies and things like this. And they all say, what the product line was, which is All Day Hustle, right? Which that's cool. I can dig that. I do an all day hustle. Fuck, I'm recording this, in the middle, like, I don't know. Is it like 11 or midnight right now? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm looking at, and like the shirts. These shirts are like $50 a pop. And I'm thinking like, no, these aren't Armani. And I mean, I understand, you can sell a shirt for like a t-shirt for $30. Like I get that. Okay. Especially if it has like some kind of like almost like dry star technology, from like Starter or whatever. Cause even at Walmart, a shirt like that's going to cost you $20. And that's like gold at Walmart, right? Something costing that much. And I was completely baffled. I'm like, what? This is just, I mean, I was actually kind of pissed because one of the reasons I dig The Rock and I like buying his shit is because when he says that he tests this stuff out, I really believe him. I think he's legitimate because he doesn't have to lie to me, like there's no need for that. But this felt like the prices on everything. You can go look at it. The prices on everything just felt like a piss poor money grab. And I was like, well, this is really disappointing. There's nothing really new here. I mean, I guess if you didn't already have shoes and you didn't get the headphones, maybe it was exciting for you. But the duffel bag was the only really unique thing that they had. And, so I picked that up. But then that was the one thing that's on back order. Like you had to pre-order it. You weren't even going to get it. Everything else they had available except for that one thing. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? So I won't get that till the middle of October, apparently. And that's bullshit. But okay. So I don't know. I was really disappointed by this. And then later on today, the news crosses my feed that like Under Armour's dropping 3% of its workforce, which only adds up to like 400 people, but I guess to some degree that's significant by percentages. And I'm like, oh, so Under Armour's fucking tanking. And so, they made this deal with The Rock and they like quadrupled the price of what any of these things should have cost. And look, believe me, I wholly understand how much performance wear normally costs. This was fucking robbery. Like, no way. There's no Under Armour shit should cost that much. I don't care whose name you put on it. So I was pretty disappointed. I'm very skeptical. And like I said, initially when The Rock had his first line come out for Under Armour, and this was just back in end of March or beginning of April, like everything sold out inside of a few minutes. I mean, literally, like all the shoes, maybe some shirts were left or something, but so much of the shit just sold out like almost instantaneously. It was crazy. End of June, when he had his other line, and that's when he had his headphones come out and everything, like those sold out pretty quick. Today, I looked at it, and nothing's really sold out. And I don't know. So hopefully everybody else is feeling what I was feeling. But I just thought that was ridiculous and very disappointing, because you count on this stuff. You want value to come out of it. And I was really trusting it. And yeah, thanks for letting me share this with you, because I was really pissed off. All your heroes fail you, of course. But this felt like a little something extra, a little too egregious for my taste. Where it's like, no, Rock, I trusted you, man, and I feel like, I don't know, you didn't give me anything really practical, because that's what I want. I want something practical, something I can use. I don't need a shirt with a bull symbol on it. Okay, I need something that I can use that's actually going to improve my workouts. And every time previous, he's sold something to that effect. And I guess there's the bag, but it's just a bag. It's a nice one. It has some cool abilities to it, but come on. So anyway, okay. This is the Star Trek update. We were just talking about The Rock. Yeah, if you forgot, he was in Star Trek, so there's our connection there. But now we've got a ton of news to get into. And this might be our first story here. Like I said, there's no comic book reviews, there's no novel reviews. I will save I could review one of the Star Trek Prometheus books, but I'm going to hold off on that. I might do the whole trilogy, because I think for the books to really make a ton of sense, it needs the entire trilogy. So we'll probably save that for December, to really go over those instead of doing them one at a time, because I want to get the complete trilogy and the complete story in my head before I really give them a full review. I think that's only fair for them. So anyway, none of those kinds of reviews. We just have literally all news throughout this whole thing, but there's a lot of amazing news and some really cool shit coming up, in my opinion. But this is a news story. Open it up. This is something I just would have never fucking thought that I would be saying or talking about. I think I was going to the grocery store when I saw this, when it came across my feed, and I looked at it and my jaw literally dropped. I was like, wait, what? Well, let me just read the headline, and all the links are in the show notes if you want to read up more on this stuff. But here it is. Astronomers discover a planet right where Star Trek's Vulcan would be. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I said. I was like, wait, what? Now, longtime listeners of Sovryn Tech, finding all these exoplanets and all this other shit that are supposedly habitable and whatnot. I am highly skeptical of these planets, because usually what'll happen is they'll announce it. It makes for interesting press. And then a week or two later, they'll say, oh, shit, we were wrong. But they won't, make that. They won't put that in the press. But if you look at the exoplanet list, it keeps getting shorter and shorter, even though it looks like we just keep adding on to it. That's not the reality of the situation here. So, that's, I don't get excited about this kind of news, but that is really fucking fascinating. Okay, wow, where Vulcan should be, there's a planet. And yes, Star Trek is that well thought out. In fact, behind me, I have my stellar cartography maps from Star Trek, and one of them is of the entire Vulcan system. Now, a lot of people might not realize this. But some of this stuff, again, like I said, it is really well thought out, but some of this stuff is really, really well thought out. Let me read the story here for you, because it's not long, but there's interesting tidbits to take from it. As Spock once said, quote, "In critical moments, men sometimes see exactly what they wish to see," end quote. But a new scientific discovery may be more than just wishful interpretation. Researchers have discovered a planet that matches the description of planet Vulcan, Spock's home planet that Star Trek's original creator Gene Roddenberry gave almost 20 years ago. Of course, it's not the exact same planet from the fictional franchise, but it is a real-life rock with very Vulcan-like properties. In collaboration with astronomers from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Roddenberry declared back in 1991 that if Vulcan really existed, it would likely orbit the real-life star 40 Eridani A, Science reported. Because 40 Eridani A is a few billion years old, Roddenberry theorized that a planet orbiting that star would have had enough time to develop a civilization as advanced as the Vulcans. 40 Eridani A is an orange dwarf, about 16 light-years away from Earth, and it is sometimes visible in the night sky. Now, the Dharma Planet Survey, which is a widespread effort to catalog planets and star systems near to our own, has found a planet orbiting 40 Eridani A, right where Vulcan would be. The planet, officially dubbed HD 26965b, is about twice the size of Earth and has a year that lasts only 42 days, Space explained. The Dharma Planet Survey's findings are due to be published in the journal Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society in October. Read more about our new planet Vulcan at Space. And, of course, there's a link there to read more all about that. Now, this is interesting. I was going to say, because I think in the book, it was a Diane Duane's book, Spock's World. I think she also labels it off as being, at Eridani, 40 Eridani A. I mean, it's... come on. it's a lucky fucking guess, right? That it's just pure fortuitousness that this sort of thing would happen. And obviously a planet with only like a 42-day year. I mean, how much life are we actually talking about, becoming a thing on this planet? So we didn't actually find Vulcan, but it is that, well, to quote Spock, fascinating. It is fascinating that there is a planet right where Vulcan was theorized to be. I'm going to let you in on a little something. So there is actually, and they were going to try and make a movie about this. There is a conspiracy theory out there that Gene Roddenberry, and this gets into kind of like the Majestic 12, right? That Eisenhower and others were, and well, eventually, I guess like Jimmy Carter and others would end up becoming a part of, where kind of this conspiracy theory about Majestic 12 is that aliens have been to Earth, and there is a council of 12 people that are the representatives of Earth to this alien culture, and the Majestic 12 are trying to guide, or MJ12, I think is the other name for it, that they give it in documents and all this stuff. And the theory is that they're trying to guide us to where we can become an interstellar species by working with this group of aliens. Now, within that kind of theory, not necessarily Majestic 12, but that same basic idea that humanity has been in contact with aliens for, well, at least since the 50s, 40s or 50s, whatever. There is a conspiracy theory, and like I said, they were going to make a movie about this, that Gene Roddenberry was actually, he was hired to make Star Trek, to effectively engage in predictive programming, to get people ready for becoming part of an interstellar society, to get humanity ready for being part of an interstellar society. And that was the entire point behind Star Trek. And that's the whole reason that it even came into existence. And like I said, there was going to be a movie about this. I don't remember if the movie was exactly going to say that the character's name was Gene Roddenberry, but it was totally based upon around this idea that this is why Gene Roddenberry actually made Star Trek. Pure conspiracy theory, conjecture. There's some little things to point at, like MJ12, but I mean, there's not enough to really run with that, okay? And no, I don't think that Star Trek was designed for. I mean, part of the reason I don't think Star Trek was designed for that is that was like that was actually a thing. First off, I don't think aliens have ever been to Earth, so let's get that out of the way. But secondly, is that the original sponsors for Star Trek. Well, let's be clear here. Well, let's not even talk about the sponsor. The initial person that gave Star Trek the real green light was Lucille Ball. Yeah, that Lucille Ball. right? And boy, we can thank her forever for changing the world. Okay, but anyway, so Lucille Ball was the one behind. And look, I mean, are you going to tell me Lucille Ball was talking to aliens? I mean, I guess they would have had a good laugh. You know, they would have met one of the best of us, that's for sure. But come on, like that didn't happen. But also, like, the initial sponsors for Star Trek included cigarette companies, Philip Morris, and like initially there was going to be a preacher aboard the Enterprise. Like Star Trek was going to end up looking very, very different than what we initially thought, based upon the sponsors that were initially getting collected for it to be, getting produced by Desilu Studios at the time, which of course was, Desilu, Desi, and Lucy, right? That's Lucille Ball's studio. Of course, later it would go on to Paramount, but initially it was with Desilu. So, yeah, no, like that didn't happen. Okay. So if somebody wants to point at, it's like, oh, see, this is more proof that Gene Roddenberry was in communication with aliens and Star Trek is getting us ready for this interstellar society because Vulcan's real. No, sorry, folks. All right. It's really, I mean, it's ironic. It's, pure happenstance, and it's a beautiful happenstance at that. Okay, I like that, and in fact, I think they should name the damn thing Vulcan. Why the hell not? Okay, but that's it. All right, that's all it is. But I never ever thought I would say that. I mean, and that is, talk about a lucky shot. I mean, that's pretty cool. And this made the rounds pretty good. And I think it's a fun story to make the rounds. So I'm happy to talk about it when normally I'm very negative about talking about any kind of exoplanet or, not that they ever claimed that this was Earth-like. Of course, they're saying it's Vulcan-like. But yeah, it just doesn't really mean much. But I mean, this is just a fun one that I thought was worthwhile to talk about. So yeah, Planet Vulcan, it's out there. Hey, maybe we'll hit it someday. No, we won't. We're never going to leave the solar system. So at least not, us alive and get to another one. But that's not even getting into the entire huge ethical problems with generational ships. And there are. Woo. All right. So anyway, let's get on to some other news. I thought that was really cute and just a very fun story. And I mean, and it's a headline that you just read and you go, wait, what? You can't help but stop. And I thought it was great. So, okay, this news just dropped today of this recording, which is September 20th. We knew that these were coming, but we didn't have a whole ton of details as far as when they were going to be coming, when they would come out, and maybe more about the story and so on. And that is kind of a mini series, you could almost call it, called Short Treks, which are these mini episodes that are going to run, I think they only run like maybe 10, 15 minutes. I mean, they're not, again, it's called short for a reason, but it's called Star Trek Short Treks. And I'm sure this is going to be a series of a type. Not that it's going to be consistent, but it's going to be something that could be used for all the various shows out there, right? Because we know we have the Picard show that's going to be coming out, and there's going to be a lot of other shows happening too. But we do have details now on these Star Trek Short Treks. Now, before I get into that story, I do want to, something I don't have in the show notes, but I want to bring up. Les Moonves has been pretty much ousted from CBS. Now, this is the guy who was spearheading. I mean, well, if you know Les, I mean, you know the deal. Like, this is the head of fucking CBS. This is the Bob Iger of CBS. He's never been a huge fan of Star Trek. So as much as Les, I think, is a very smart businessman, and I know the problems that are being described around what, there's a lot of accusations, sexual accusations and everything being lobbied against him, and I'm not belittling those. Okay. I'm just saying he's a very shrewd, very smart businessman. I don't know how well CBS All Access would have done if he didn't cut the deals that he cut. But he is self-avowed not a fan of Star Trek. He thinks it's like a kind of a waste of time. And if any point Star Trek ever got the short shrift by CBS when they were running it, or as they've been running it, you can kind of blame him. So I don't mind that he's out. Okay. And in fact, the fact that he's out might be where, really CBS is trying to just get whatever kind of shining light that they have. I almost said guiding light. Wouldn't that have been ironic? Those that know soap operas. But anyway, CBS is probably in real damage control mode, and they're just trying to get stuff out there to get some kind of positive press around anything that they're doing. Well, these short treks are certainly a step in the right direction. And these are, again, there's 4 of them. And the first one is is amazingly, this is what blew me away and I thought was really great. The first one's going to hit on October 4th on CBS All Access. Obviously, you'll be able to find it on torrent sites pretty much instantaneously as well. I do pay for CBS All Access, but that's because I enjoy a lot of the content that's available there pretty quickly, and I do want to support Star Trek. I also like Strange Angel. I think that's really cool. I mean, there's stuff on there that I'm digging. So anyway, we're going to get 4 episodes, and the first one, let's see, they do have the dates for all of them. So the first one will be October 4th. The next one will get released on November 8th, then December 6th, and then January 3rd, with probably season 2 of Discovery picking up shortly thereafter. The first one that we're going to get on Thursday, October 4th, and these are all getting released on a Thursday, which is an interesting day to choose, but whatever. You got to pick one. Might as well. You got a 1 in 7 shot. Anyway, the first one's called Runaway. I'll read you the description here. On board the USS Discovery, Ensign Tilly encounters an unexpected visitor in need of help. However, this unlikely pair may have more in common than meets the eye. And that one's actually going to be written by Alex Kurtzman, who is running Star Trek now. He is the Gene Roddenberry / Rick Berman / Braga of Star Trek today. Kurtzman is, shall we say, the man. So that's great to have him on board with that. The next one will be called Calypso. This might be the most interesting one, and I'll explain why. And this one will be out in November. After waking up in an unfamiliar sickbay, Kraft, played by Aldous Hodge, black guy. I think that this is a new character. That's why I think this one's going to be very interesting. Let's read on. Finds himself on board a deserted ship, and his only companion and hope for survival is an AI computer interface. This is the one written by Michael Chabon, who is... Well, if you know the name, you know what he's done. But they've made a really big deal about getting him to write for Star Trek, and he loves doing it. So I mean, they've been bringing on guys, Rick and Morty and so on. I mean, it's really amazing what they've been able to do. So anyway, this character of Kraft, new character. I'm sure he's going to have a big part to play in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure that's going to end up being a thing. So you're going to want to keep an eye out for that one. That idea of an AI computer interface, that could get interesting. Maybe he's like, his name's Kraft. You don't get a last name. If there's an AI computer involved, I wonder if he's going to be related to Richard Daystrom, right, of the Daystrom Institute, who created the M5 AI computer in the original series episodes. Keep in mind, that... So here's the thing. Like, all right, I just made a speculation, right? And you want to speculate responsibly. Because, like in Star Wars, nobody speculates responsibly. They say the dumbest shit that'll come out of their mouths, or that'll come into their minds, and then it comes out of their mouths. With Star Trek, unlike Star Wars, Star Trek Discovery has actually gone out of its way to reference the entire Star Trek canon, from Enterprise to the original series to Next Gen to Deep Space Nine to Voyager. They have gone out of their way to do that. So I think you can speculate a little harder with Star Trek than with Star Wars. I'd recommend just stay fucking clear. Don't even really bother speculating as far as that goes. So I wonder if this is going to have something to do with Daystrom, but we'll see. I don't know. The character of Kraft sounds interesting. Aldous Hodge has a great look. I think he has a tremendous, almost like a Lando Calrissian kind of look, speaking of Star Wars. I really dig it. So maybe it'll be a part of Section 31. I'm totally down with that as well. The next episode of the 4, this being the 3rd, this is the one that's going to come out in December, is called The Brightest Star. It says, before he was the first Kelpian to join Starfleet, Saru lived a simple life on his home planet of Kaminar with his father and sister. Young Saru, full of ingenuity and a level of curiosity uncommon among his people, yearns to find out what lies beyond his village, leading him on an unexpected path. Cool. All right, a Saru story. A lot of people really like the character of Saru. Rock and roll, go for it. The next one that'll come out in January, again, right before season 2 starts, probably, of Star Trek Discovery, we get Harry Mudd. Ryan Wilson's coming back. The Escape Artist is the name of the episode. Harry Mudd, back to his old tricks of stealing and double dealing, finds himself in a precarious position aboard a hostile ship just in time to try out his latest con. So anyway, interesting stuff. We're going to get those. I love that this is a thing. I am a big fan of short content. Of course, I write my own short fiction, which comes out in newsletters and other various areas, including for Star Trek itself, actually. Not for the official, Paramount / CBS run stuff, but, I have my own Star Trek Forbidden Frontiers, which is a lot of fun to do. And this, with the short treks, again, this is something where I think, and this is a brilliant move, okay, because one of the problems we have today with streaming services, or it's not really a problem for us as viewers. I mean, it can be, depending upon our memory and mentality. But it's a real problem for networks and studios, is that if you do the binge watching thing, like Netflix, you can't churn out seasons of these shows quick enough. Okay, as to where, I mean, and I thought it was kind of bullshit, yes, that CBS All Access was like holding back, even though all the episodes, most of the episodes were done, that they were holding back and that, they'd only air one episode a week, as to where, okay, it's a streaming service, I'm paying for it, give me the whole fucking, season right now. Why do I have to wait? This should be like Netflix. Well, just like Netflix is doing, similar to what they had been doing with Voltron, even though the last 2 seasons of Voltron looks like they're going to give us full 13-episode seasons. Before, they were splitting it up, right? They're doing 6 episodes, then they'd give us another 6, and they'd say each one was its own season. This is the problem that you have, is that you got to keep people's appetites whetted. All right, you got to keep them hungry. Or, you got to feed them, but keep them hungry, but you got to feed them at certain points. So you can't take an entire year, almost an entire year off, all right, from a show and expect people to remember what the hell was going on. It used to be, sure, 3-4 months maybe, but now we're looking at almost like, just shy of an entire year. That you do this, because your seasons aren't that long anymore either. Your seasons are usually 15, 16 episodes now, 13, or I mean, if you're lucky, usually it's like 12 or 13, as to where it used to be you'd get 22, 24, 27 episode seasons and so on, that could last you a few months. They don't do that anymore. You're done inside of a couple, 2-3 months. And then you have that whole other 9 months, for someone else, or, for some other show to steal people's hearts. So if you have Star Trek short treks here, these little episodes that you can make, that you can just release at any given moment, 1 per month, I think this is great, because it keeps Star Trek in people's minds. It keeps Star Trek Discovery in people's minds. It keeps them hungry. It's like, okay, oh yeah, there's more Star Trek. Oh yeah, more Star Trek. And even if it's only 15 minutes, that's fucking great. Just keep people on the hook, and this is because you can't do, because of streaming services, okay, people watch shit faster now. You can't do okay, we'll take a mid-season break and all this. I mean, that stuff just doesn't work anymore. So how are you going to keep people excited and keep them from forgetting about your Dynamite show that you're making? Well, you do something like this. I think this is a very unique solution and a very interesting one. So short treks, I'm totally supportive of this. I think this is wonderful. However, the one thing it has to do, I think it's a great idea, but it has to do this. It has to, unlike where the Star Wars franchise, since it's been owned by Disney, has really dropped the ball in not interconnecting the various mediums and the various, the various different types of media that get put out there, like the comic books. The comic books do a great job of having internal consistency, and they might even work better with the novels. But the movies and whatnot do not connect with what's happening in the comics, the books, and even so much. I mean, there's some connection, like with Rogue One and Rebels, you get some of that, but you really need to have some hyperconnective tissue, okay, with these short treks, with whatever the fuck is going to happen in the big stuff, in the big shows, in the big season, or in the in Discovery or in the Picard show or something like that. But otherwise, I think this is great. I mean, it doesn't have to do that, but you're going to have to let people know that it's standalone and it's just something fun. But I think it's in your best interest to make sure that these matter to what happens in the future, because otherwise then people won't care about them if they don't have any bearing on what they're waiting for, which is another season of their show, right? So that's really, really important, I think, that they do that. But as far as I can tell, they are going to do that. I would have loved, they could have done 5 of these, and I personally would have loved an Empress Georgiou short trek, like that deleted scene that we got that's that you can watch online, where it seems like she's being asked to join Section 31, of course, which I think is fucking tremendous. Do stuff like that. I really would have liked another Empress Georgiou one, or even if they just expanded on that, get Michelle Yeoh in. I know she just did, Crazy Rich Asians or whatever, but get her in, and, I'm sure she's contracted at whatever price they've got her at. And let's have a little expansion on that and make that official, because right now we don't know that deleted scene is necessarily official, as far as I know. So that's kind of annoying. We really should know whether or not that's a thing. So anyway, speaking of Star Trek Discovery, there was at Fan Expo Canada in Toronto. Now, these are becoming quite the thing. They're just calling them Fan Expos. I think it's a great name. Stop calling everything Comic-Con already. There was one in Boston recently. I kind of wish I went to it, but it sounded like it had a lot of big names. Shatner was there. There's a lot of others that would have been really cool to see. But anyway, they had a lot of the... Well, there was some of the cast was there, but there were also producers and, a lot of the crew, not like the crew of the Discovery, but the crew of the show, Star Trek Discovery, producers, and designers and everybody were there. And they were talking quite a bit. They made some comments about, and because I'm sure they were inundated with questions from the fans, saying, why does Star Trek Discovery have the look that it does? Why didn't you go with a more original series look, etc.? And they gave some answers to this, and I don't know how I felt about it. Like a production designer, Tamara Deverell, there was one question and about actually the design, and this is what she said at this fan expo. She said, I think that we owe it to the fans to keep in time with the technology that we have. So whereas we all love the original series and the cardboard sets that they had, if we did that and offered that up to all of you, I think you would be sadly disappointed in this day and age. And so in keeping with the rhythm of the times and the technology that we have with CAD, drafting, CNC printing, and 3D printing, we are expanding our universe, going where no one has gone before. Okay, again, I've brought this point up a million times. Okay, so they're trying to defend, okay, this is why everything looks a little more advanced. In fact, there's another, well, I want to read some of the other quotes. In fact, let me read those quotes. So the other things that were said, in fact, art director Jody Clement said, also, we have incorporated consoles. We do have lots of toggles and switches, which are mixed in with technology from 2018. So it's an ode to the original series. So they're pretty much saying, okay, yeah, we know it doesn't look like the original series, but we tried to put some elements, like we put physical switches and everything, which, yeah, I mean, staying here, yeah, I think that's nice. But let me read the last quote. And the last quote is from concept illustrator Ryan Denning. He said, I would also like to add that I tend to keep very closely to the movies as opposed to the 1960s series, especially The Undiscovered Country, which is as advanced as they could get. The Enterprise really, before the movies, is a bunch of cardboard sets. So there has to be a point we can give you more advanced technology than you have in your living room, or I think you would be kind of bored. I disagree with that. And that's the overall point I have to all of these. First off, I'm not seeing so much Undiscovered Country influence. I said this from the very first episodes of Discovery. This looks like Star Trek the Motion Picture. Not a bad thing. Like, okay, if you're going to go with one design language for Starfleet, that's one of my favorites. So I don't have a problem with that. The doors look like the motion picture and so on. I think that's fine. I get their point. I understand what they're saying. But again, I bring this up every time. The fourth season episode of Enterprise, and again, this would have aired, 2004, 2005? In A Mirror Darkly. Okay, this is the two-parter where it all took place in the Mirror Universe. One of the best episodes of Enterprise, and it was just dynamite Star Trek straight up. Okay? In that, there is a point where, they find the USS Defiant. Now, not the Defiant from from Deep Space Nine, but the Defiant from the episode of the original series, The Tholian Web. You see the Constitution class in all of its glory, what it looked like in the 60s, of course done in CGI, but exactly what it looked like in the 60s and the way that they updated it for the remastering of the original series that they did at that time. And the bridge looked exactly like the fucking bridge, okay, from the 1960s, from the original series. And I don't think anybody complains. Like, I really fucking don't think I've not heard one complaint of somebody coming out and saying, shit, that doesn't look futuristic. I just don't hear that. People get it. They know it's the Enterprise, for fuck's sake, okay? That's what it looks like. And people accept that. I mean, everybody recognizes it doesn't matter how little they've seen Star Trek. When you see the original series captain's chair, which is one of the most prized possessions in science fiction collectability. Okay, who's got it now? Does Woz still have that? I think Wozniak has it. Wozniak or Paul Allen. I mean, there might even be more than one. Anyway, so, when anybody sees that fucking chair, they instantly know what it is. Because it's just iconic. It'd be like saying, yeah, we're going to update the design of the X-Wings, in Star Wars. Are you fucking kidding me? There's a reason that they stuck with the classic look, with The Force Awakens, right? No, they're lying. They're full of crap. Nobody would be bored. You'd get it. And in fact, it would almost stand, and I've said this before too, that when you see, in Enterprise, when you, in the episodes in A Mirror Darkly, when you see the Bridge of the Defiant, and it looks like the 1960s Enterprise, right? Because they're both Constitution-class ships. When you see that, it looks wildly futuristic because it's like, oh shit, there's no screens. Like you have to know what all these, lights mean and everything. And it really, it's striking to you and it's memorable. So I don't agree with them. I think they're full of shit. They just didn't want to have to recreate all this stuff. They wanted to do their own thing because they probably couldn't get people to come on board if they just wanted it to look exactly like it did back in the day. I mean, when you watch Star Trek Continues, right? Who's complaining about this? I don't agree. I think everything the boring, that comment about it being boring and all that stuff, that's a pure horseshit. Another example would be the 6th season episode of The Next Generation, Relics, when Scotty ends up in the 24th century and he goes on the holodeck with Picard, and they're, they have the original bridge of the original Enterprise. No bloody A, no bloody B, no bloody C, no bloody D. And it looks amazing. And your heart stops when you see it. So I don't fucking buy this. I don't know exactly what's going on here, and I don't know if we'll ever exactly find out the reality about it, because we just recently finally got some confirmation that the reason Paramount did a quasi reboot with the Kelvin timeline, with the J.J. Abrams movies, is because they would have had to pay out tons of intellectual property to use the original designs of the Enterprise. Now, CBS owns the original designs for the original Enterprise, so that shouldn't be a problem, but fuck, maybe in some way it is. Maybe they'd have to, I don't know, maybe they have to pay out to the Jeffries estate or something. I cannot believe, I don't agree with their argument saying that people wouldn't buy it today. That's horseshit. That's pure, it's just utter fucking horseshit. If people can get enjoyment out of watching, medieval crap like Game of Thrones, they can enjoy 1960s styled, science fiction designs. It's crazy. So I don't buy it. I get their points. I understand what they're saying to some degree, but no, I don't think it's boring at all. Now, and especially since they're saying for the fans. Now, if they're trying to reach out to new fans, yeah, now that's an argument to be made, is that we're trying to bring in some new blood and whatever. Even that I don't exactly agree with. But that's something I could almost buy. But that's not the argument they're making. They're saying, no, it's going to be boring for everybody. You will be so annoyed because your living room is more advanced than what you're seeing on the bridge of the original series Enterprise. Which, I don't know about you. Not that I've been in a whole ton of living rooms lately, but I've yet to see a living room that is more advanced than the bridge of the original series Enterprise. That's a ridiculous analogy to make. But anyway. So let's go on to that was link is in the show notes if you want to read more about that. They had a bunch of deleted scenes that they were showing off there and that they talked about and everything. A lot of that stuff's probably going to be in the Blu-ray, which comes, or the Blu-ray of season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, which I'll be doing a full review of come November when it comes out. That'll probably be in the November Star Trek update. So I don't want to cover all that right now, but I thought that I really don't buy that. But I am still intrigued to see what they do. Like what I've seen for season 2 of Discovery in reference particularly to the Enterprise, I like how it looks. I'm fine with it. I'm really fine with it. But just don't give me any bullshit reasons. Tell me the truth. And if it's because of IP and money, tell me that. And I'll accept it. Because I know how much that sucks and how you have to work around that. But fucking tell me. So anyway, let's get on to some other news here. Well, speaking of the original series, like the original series, why don't we go ahead? There was an interesting comment from William Shatner, of all people. And I'm actually reading from comicbook.com, which is great. Comicbook.com actually has comicbook.com/Star Trek. It's a site inundated with way too many ads, but they do actually do a pretty good job of reporting some of the news. Anyway, this is from September 16th, 2018. William Shatner explains the, quote, oh my, end quote, moment in Star Trek Generations. Pretty much, Shatner explained what really happened, why his character was killed off in the first place, and so on. Let me read a bit of the story here. William Shatner has been speaking a lot lately about the death of Captain Kirk in 1994's Star Trek Generations. At the IC Collectors Convention in Nashville, he looked back on how he prepared for the big death scene. Shatner has previously explained that he didn't have much say in the decision to kill Kirk, also explaining that it was more of a financial decision than a storytelling one. Still, as an actor, he couldn't control the if and why of Kirk's death. Who could decide, or still, as an actor, he couldn't control the if and why of Kirk's death, who could decide how Kirk would go out. His thoughts on that factored into Kirk's final words, oh my, which... All right, let me talk about this for a minute. First off, the financial decision. Okay, apparently, this is something Shatner has talked about recently in other stories as well. There's links for all of this in this one story. So Shatner pretty much says that the reason that they killed off Kirk was the studio, Paramount, I guess in this case. Paramount said, look, we're going to kill you either way. You can either be in the movie or we're in the movie, or, as in be in Star Trek Generations, you yourself, William Shatner, or in Star Trek Generations, we're going to mention how you died. We're going to tell you. And so Shatner, of course, said, okay, well, I'll take the payday, and then I'll be in the movie. Sure. Okay. But he didn't have to. It sounds like Shatner didn't like the fact that his character was killed off. And I have every reason to believe that, even though Shatner was really at that time doing some interesting things. Like he was doing Tech War, which I'm a huge fan of everything he did with Tech War. The TV show, the DOS game, the novels were phenomenal, the comic books, all of that. Of course, he was also doing Quest for Tomorrow, Man of War. Shatner was a busy, busy man at this point. It's not like he didn't have other projects. It's not like, oh shit, I'm losing my only gig that I've got is Captain Kirk. No, that's crazy. In fact, he would end up writing Ashes of Eden and The Return, specifically The Return, which would pretty much say, and I think it's one of the best Star Trek novels ever. Again, it's William Shatner's name. It's his story, more or less. Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens actually were the ghostwriters for it. I know that, but whatever. We'll say William Shatner wrote it, okay? Because who the hell are you to argue with William Shatner? So, Shatner writes The Return, which pretty much reverses. And Ashes of Eden would kind of do similar. All of this ends up reversing exactly what happened in Star Trek Generations. So Kirk actually isn't dead if you buy into the Shatnerverse. An interesting thing to note about this is that a lot of your higher end Star Trek fan productions, your independent productions, most of those will, people that make web series or even, some other things, whatever kind of, Star Trek theater that they do, most of those actually accept the Shatnerverse, what they call the Shatnerverse, which are these various books, Ashes of Eden, The Return, Federation, Spectre, Avenger, so on. They consider those canon. And now everybody can have their own headcanon. In my own headcanon, I also consider the Shatner novels totally canon because they're so awesome. They are so much fucking fun to read. It's the best Star Trek you'll get in the novels, in my opinion, just flat out. They're not canon technically, but fuck, they might as well be. And I just as well enjoy Kirk being alive more so, especially in the 24th century, than anything else. So yeah, I'll take that. And of course, in the books, because we know in the 24th century, right, that Scotty's there, Dr. McCoy's still alive, and so on. So you get to have in those books, there's times where you get those nice moments where, hey, Kirk's back and and Spock's alive, of course. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You get the original crew is kind of still in the 24th century. Partly 3 of them by canon. One of them just isn't canon, but fuck, it might as well be. Of course, that being Captain Kirk. So anyway, as far as the financial decision, Paramount was saying, the Star Trek, the original series movies aren't going to make money anymore. We're not going to make them anymore. We're going all in on the next generation to do money. And of course, with First Contact, they'd end up being right, not so much of Generations. So, you can either be in this movie and control this, or you not really control it, but have some say in the narrative, or you can't. And so Shatner decided to be, in the film. And I'm glad that he was, even though this is where I want to stop, because we bring up the oh my moment. Now, I want to read more about the oh my moment. Okay. But I thought that was for me personally, I thought it was just the dumbest. Those are the last words of James Tiberius Kirk. come on. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I consider the Shatnerverse canon in my own head, because I can't live with that. That's like the end of Kirk. I mean, sure, you could say he saved so much of civilization's planet and blah, 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 but not enough for me, baby. Not enough for me. So anyway, let's read on with this. His thoughts on that, what factored into Kirk's final words. Oh my. Shatner recalled the night before filming Kirk's death scene, explaining what he was thinking that led to those words. Quote, I thought about dying, my death, and this beloved character who's going to be put to rest, end quote, Shatner said. Quote, how do I play it? You know, there's got to be a moment. You're alive and you're going to die. Now you're alive and now you're going to die, right? Kirk comes back. He's in the Nexus, comes back again, blah, blah, dies, blah, yeah. There has to be a moment when we all, at that moment of death, we say, holy cats, I'm dying. And you're dead. How do you treat that moment? And I think we die the way we live. If we live filled with fear, a fear of flying, a fear of leaving the village, you'll be fearful. You'll lose your breath. You'll panic and you'll die. Or if you look forward to the next adventure, maybe you're conscious. Maybe we're conscious when we die. Maybe we're aware. A lot of people believe in heaven. We're all going to go to a lovely place and see somebody. I don't know what age we see our mother and father. Are they still old or are they young? We don't know. That would be a lovely thing to happen, but we don't know. It's how we die that's interesting. And I think we die the way we live. Captain Kirk always treated the imminent death by the alien always treated the imminent death by the alien. And the way I played it was, wow, oh, look at that. I wonder if he's going to eat me, with awe and wonder. And so Captain Kirk, I wanted him to die with awe and wonder. Star Trek. So anyway, that's the end of what Shatner said. Star Trek: The Next Generation star Patrick Stewart recently announced that he will return to his role as Captain Jean-Luc Picard in a new Star Trek series on CBS All Access. Shatner has thought about whether he might reprise his Star Trek role in a future series. Quote, he says, right now I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I've been offered many series over the years, but I haven't done them because of the commitment of time. And at this stage of my life, that's more valuable than anything else. End quote. Shatner did leave the door open for a cameo or guest role if the Star Trek writers can justify having Kirk back from the dead and decades older than he was last time anyone saw him. Quote, it will have to pass through enormous hurdles, including permission from Paramount, and then they'll have to get back to me and see where things are at, end quote, Shatner explained. So let's talk a little bit about this. Shatner coming back. I mean, well, then just make the Shatner novels like canon, right? Just say, the Borg brought him back like they did in The Return, and then we're good. Of course, is that going to happen? Probably not. I would love to have Shatner do one last stint as Kirk, because honestly, I am always scared to death. Speaking of death, I'm always scared to death that he's just going to drop like tomorrow, every day I'm in the back of my mind, I'm always expecting to hear that Shatner's gone, and that sucks. And thankfully I had the great pleasure of going to see Shatner, actually in Concord, just recently, went with the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and Ellen. It was a great time. But I wouldn't mind seeing him on the screen one more time. But I got to admit, I'm wholly disappointed in, I appreciate Shatner clarifying what was behind the decision for Kirk dying, but his explanation of how Kirk died, that oh my still feels, like I said, so cheap. I mean, it just doesn't, it's not enough, for one of the greatest characters in science fiction history to just kind of go like that. I mean, and you can do that kind of the awe and wonder thing that he described. In fact, as a counterpoint would be, Bruce Boxleitner in Babylon 5 when Sheridan dies. Well, quote unquote dies. We don't exactly know what happened there, but anyway, sorry folks, spoiler alert, the show's only been around for however long, and I've been telling, for decades, and I've been telling you to watch it for almost as long. But anyway, when Sheridan dies, he says, oh look, the sun's coming up, and it's a beautiful little moment that makes sense. There's no real precedent to the only thing we ever knew about Kirk's death is from Star Trek V, where Kirk says, I've always known that I'll die alone. And he doesn't exactly die alone. I don't feel like he did that. I mean, it created, that death in Generations created a great moment where Spock actually goes to that planet in, I guess, would that be? Yeah, in the Ashes of Eden, at the end of it, in an epilogue of Ashes of Eden. That's great. That works. And that's a beautiful moment. But I I still, and I like Star Trek Generations as a movie, but that death scene, no good. Like I really don't dig it. As to where the lead up to it, where Kirk's like, oh, sounds like fun, and he's talking to Picard and everything, like that was really cool. And Shatner's explanation just leaves me still feeling like, but Bill, you didn't deliver. Like I didn't feel like you had awe or anything. If you added in the word God, that could have. I mean, I'm not religious, but that could have worked. If he said, "Oh my God," like that would have been great. But just the "oh my" never sat right with me, even as a little kid at the time. And I guess it was at 94, so I was 13. Never sat right with me. So anyway, but there's some explanation around that. I thought that was interesting to talk about. The financial decision's really the more interesting thing as far as that goes. Like, who knew that they pretty much strong-armed and said, no, we're going to kill off your character. You can either just be a part of it or not. And wow, talk about dickish from Paramount. Okay, let's get into, there's two more stories I really do want to get into, but we'll try and make them quick. This was an interesting one that got put out there. And it's unused Star Trek The Next Generation episode outline featuring the Guardian and two Spocks. And of course, when we're talking about the Guardian, that's the Guardian of Forever. This story is also from September 16th. The link is from actually trekmovie.com. But Tracy Torme, who did great writing for The Next Generation, in 1988, in fact, the script is dated, or the treatment, I should say. It's not a full-on script. It's an what you would call a treatment. Is from August 25th, 1988. So, this is, what's that, 30 years ago? That's amazing to think that that's 30 years ago. But in any case, so this would have been like season 2, maybe season 3 they would have ended up using it. Hopefully it would have been season 3. But yeah, I'm guessing this would have happened in season 2, and I don't know how that would have worked, and I don't know how well that would have looked. But basically, there was a story they were going to call Return to Forever, and they were going to, the Enterprise D was, Picard and crew were going to go to the Guardian of Forever, which, of course, if you remember the classic Harlan Ellison penned episode, City on the Edge of Forever, widely regarded as the greatest hour of Star Trek ever, and widely regarded as one of the best hours of television ever, actually, by TV Guide themselves. This would have been pretty cool, and you can read more of it in the show notes, but basically, they would have taken Leonard Nimoy. He would have played both Spocks. And they would have had Spock in the 24th century go back to like 78 years in the past, which would have been around Star Trek 4, which Star Trek 4 came out in 87, so it would have matched up right there. But you would have had these two Spocks kind of work together to solve this kind of big problem within it. And it's an interesting idea. It would have been really great to see two Spocks in action. This probably would have been a fairly high-budgeted episode just to pull that off. And because, the ability to do two characters like that really wasn't perfected at the time, and there's certainly early episodes of The Next Generation you can think of where you had like multiple datas, or data and lore, or even literally multiple datas, and it didn't exactly work the best, and it was easier even with an android or somebody that had a less than human look. But this could have been really cool to do this. And granted, I love what we got when we finally did get Spock in the 24th century, of course, that being the 6-season episode, two-parter Unification. This script is pretty cool, and I love the idea of bringing back the Guardian of Forever. I think there have been books that had dealt with the Guardian of Forever, like where, in fact, actually Spock would go through it again, and he'd go through it back to, like, primitive Vulcan, where, in fact, if you remember one of my Forbidden Frontiers, I think it was Another Side of Paradise Part 4, where you go back in time and like Vulcan's almost like Rome, and there's all these warring factions and everything. In some novels, and in fact, there was like even sequel novels to this, there was that plot line where Spock does go through the Guardian of Forever again to ancient Vulcan. He even has a son there, and his son is like this, conquering hero. It's on ancient Vulcan. It's a really interesting. It's really interesting stuff. I would have loved it. Any time that you can tie into the original series, I think that's great, because I think there are so many wonderful ideas in the original series that never get touched, say nothing of the animated series, which I think we might have gotten the Guardian of Forever in that again. The Guardian of Forever is such a wild idea that really could be explored more. I wouldn't mind if Discovery fucked with it in some way, or hell, let's have this Picard show deal with the Guardian of Forever somehow. I think that would be fantastic. I'd totally be on board with that. By the way, so anyway, you can read kind of the little treatment. It's only 4 pages. It's very short. I probably could read it right now, but, on air. But regardless, check it out. But this is cool, that there was originally this script. There were a lot of wild scripts for the original series, for the Next Generation. Like, there were ones that had to do with transgender, which we kind of got. There was ones that had to do with openly gay characters and so on, a lot of which got shot down by the studio, unfortunately. In fact, some of them were Tracy Torme penned as well. So those are always fascinating to look into, a lot of those Next Generation episodes that never got made. But this is a new one to me. I had never heard about this one, and the idea of 2 Spocks is pretty cool. And of course, J.J. Abrams would pretty much end up doing this very thing, right, with the 2009 Star Trek film, where, you get Leonard Nimoy and Zachary Quinto face to face, and it turned out beautifully. So I can only imagine how great it would have been with the Next Generation, even though it might have looked odd if they were doing it in the second season. Another piece of news that had come out that I don't have a link for in the show notes, but the rest of the Next Generation cast, LeVar Burton and Marina Sirtis and so on, they've all come out and said none of them have been approached or asked to be in the Picard show. So I don't know what that means. Maybe they just haven't been asked yet. We don't know what stage that the Picard show is really at. It's just kind of recently been announced, but they have not been approached. We'll see what happens. I mean, if there's anybody I think that they should put on there, it'd be nice to have Gates McFadden, sure, but you got to get Michael Dorn. You got to have Worf. Worf can save your show. Worf can make your show, right? Think Deep Space Nine, even though I like Deep Space Nine without him. I totally understand how he, came in and saved that in a lot of people's eyes. So that's something, interesting to look into. So yeah, I mean, these alternative treks that could have been a thing, and who knows, maybe these scripts can get used in the future. That's something Star Trek's done for a while, right? Remember Star Trek Phase 2, originally we weren't going to get Star Trek the Motion Picture in the 70s. There was going to be a fourth, Paramount was going to make a network. This is before UPN was a gleam in anyone's eye. They were going to make a 4th network, and they were going to have a Star Trek show be kind of the flagship show for this new network in the 70s. And a lot of the character ideas like Zahn and Ilea and so on, and also a lot of the scripts and the episode ideas for that would end up getting used for the Next Generation. So this could still end up happening, and in kind of a way it did, right? Like I said, with the 2009 Star Trek film. So interesting stuff. Check it out in the show notes if you want. So, okay, one last story. And I normally don't want to do this kind of story, but I thought that this was pretty cool, and so I want to mention it. Okay, normally, because my greatest hope is that next month for the October Star Trek update, I can have guests on. We'll see what happens, okay? So August and September have just been nuts as far as schedule. It really has. So, okay, this is actually coming from Tor.com, which, Tor, of course, major publisher and all, but Tor has a fantastic, major publisher of science fiction, has a fantastic website for science fiction news. It really does. I go to Tor.com all the time. Normally, I don't like to cover this sort of stuff, and it's particularly bad when it comes to Star Wars. And that is somebody on Reddit, in some subreddit somewhere, in some dark, cavernous part of the planet, comes up with some idea, and everybody thinks it's, holy shit, that's so wild, and somehow that becomes news and ends up in, like, your Google Assistant feed. It drives me fucking insane. Like, I really can't stand it. But I kind of like this one, and this has to do with Star Trek, not Star Wars. But normally I won't give these things the time of day. I won't talk about them on the Star Trek update. I'm not going to talk about them or on Star Wars update with, when I do that with my co-host Robin, and I'm not going to do it on Star Trek update either. But this one scratched an itch of mine, shall we say. And what it is, let me read the headline here. This Star Trek fan theory explains why the Borg's attacks on the Federation make no sense. That's a very intriguing title. And I'm going to give you a very brief overview of this because we're over an hour as far as the Star Trek update goes, and that's because I was fucking talking about The Rock for 10 minutes. And thank you for indulging me again in that. But anyway, what I like about this is that this references this whole theory of basically why do the Borg keep attacking the Federation, and also why don't they just like really bring on a full onslaught fleet of ships against the Federation, like what Voyager keeps having to deal with in the Delta Quadrant, right? Like, why does it seem like the Borg are in one sense all powerful, but then at the same time hampered in a way? And it's an interesting question. And also, like you can say, well, what's their mission? They seek to better themselves by, assimilating other species and everything. And so they just keep trying to assimilate, humanity and anything that's in their path. But like, what's their real reason for doing a lot of this stuff? Like, it all, like, what's their real motivation, right? So this guy, or I'm assuming it's a guy, it's S-Trek APOL 7979 on Reddit. Ooh, boy. Actually, it's a pretty great subreddit for the Daystrom Institute, where they have a lot of fun talking Star Trek. I mean, you want to get nerdy, you want to get sweaty with Star Trek, that's where you go. But anyway, the basic idea is it's referencing an episode of Voyager where they talk about the Omega molecule. Okay, and the Omega molecule is this really unstable molecule that if you fuck with it the wrong way, you could end up wiping out the entire universe. And in fact, the Federation has what's called the Omega Protocol, which you deal with in a Voyager episode, where when you encounter that, Starfleet captain's got it, like everything goes to, everything goes dark, ship shuts down. It's really crazy shit. And I love the episode is called the Omega Directive. So in that episode of Voyager, when that happens, Janeway engages in the Omega Protocol because they've encountered, an Omega molecule. And 7 of 9 tells Janeway about the Borg's own history with the Omega molecule and how they had a horrendous accident with it that really, really fucked up the Borg fleet and, potentially killed millions, if not billions of Borg. And so the basic gist of this theory, and I got to give this guy credit. He really lays out a ton of evidence. But the basic idea is that the Omega molecule, that experiment that the Borg engaged in, now the Federation did its own experimentation in the 23rd century. In fact, I'll give you, for patrons here, because I'm still doing that episode of Star Trek Forbidden Frontiers, that full-on audio theater that's going to run about 2 hours. That has, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. That has a lot to do with the Omega molecule. In fact, the experiments that get referenced in the Omega Directive. I wrote the script back in March, well before this guy came up with this thing. But anyway, I really think there's a lot of magic that can be had with this concept of the Omega molecules. So anyway, his basic gist is that the Omega molecule completely fucked with space-time around huge swaths of Borg space. And so literally there's avenues that their fleets can't travel in because this Omega molecule explosion, or this Omega molecule experiment that the Borg engaged in, that 7 of 9 was talking about in this Voyager episode, is almost trapping the Borg. And that's why they can't just send huge fleets into the Alpha Quadrant. Okay, that's kind of the basic idea. And also, because the Federation has access to what really makes the Omega molecule work, which is an element called boronite ore, which is very rare. They want access to the Federation, and then at the same time they kind of want to let the Federation sort of explore this on their own in a way. It's a really interesting theory, but basically the entire thrust behind whatever the Borg do, and the reason why okay, so if they just want to, because here's the contradiction with the Borg, right? So they want to better themselves, and they'll only assimilate, or, they want to assimilate everything, it seems, right? They want to assimilate the Federation, blah, 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 blah. At least that's what it seems, right? But then how come you can beam aboard their ship, and as long as you're not perceived as a threat, they don't just assimilate you? If they just want to, make the entire universe Borg, why aren't they making the entire universe Borg? Because what they're actually doing is they are trying to harness the power of the Omega molecule. And so if you aren't interfering with their mission on that, then they don't give a shit about you. But the Federation has access to boronite ore, and so we got to take the Federation seriously. But they're also hindered in how much they can access the Federation because of their own experiment with the Omega molecule. This is real sweaty stuff, right? This is real Star Trek sweaty stuff. I love it, though. And it's such a well-done theory. I mean, so well done with so many different reference points. There's points about with the show Enterprise and so on. And also the fact that I've had an interest because I remember, seeing the Omega Directive when it first aired, and like when everything kind of goes blank and suddenly there's the Omega symbol on all the computer console screens and everything aboard the Voyager. You can't help but go, whoa, what the fuck's that? What's going on there? In fact, if you hadn't noticed, for the past 3 or so years, the Sovereign Tech symbol has ironically been an Omega symbol. So like I said, this theory really scratched an itch for me, and I think it's brilliantly done. I mean, I totally recommend reading more into it. But that's the basic gist. It's just that the Borg have become obsessed with harnessing the Omega molecule, and whatever that takes, everything else is really just kind of a secondary directive, as it were. So yeah, cool stuff. You definitely want to read that if you want to do some deep diving on some Star Trek theory. I mean, it's there for you. So anyway, all right, that's it. I'm going to wrap this up because we're over an hour now, and nothing else really to add in as far as that goes. People have been asking about Star Trek Forbidden Frontier, still getting produced. These things take a ton of time, and I've, for reasons that I've explained on Sovereign Tech, I've been a very, my schedule has been nuts. And as much as I hoped that 2018 things would actually calm down, it's actually been quite the opposite. But not necessarily for bad things. So anyway, yeah, we got, Star Trek's looking great. There's amazing things going on. We're getting movies and TV shows up the fucking ass, in a good way. And, we're the short treks. Like, I love this. I'm so excited that we're going to be getting these over the next few months. Really looking forward to that. Things are kind of quiet on the comic book and novel, and book ends of Star Trek, which is a little troubling to me, but there was some news that there's going to be some big deals going on with Star Trek comics that'll be announced over the next few months. So we'll see what those end up being. One of them looked like maybe a Titan comic of some kind, or there's like a Next Generation comic coming that'll probably, I'm going to guess that the claim is that there's a Next Generation comic coming. I'm going to guess this ties into the new Picard show, which that would be exciting to see. So we'll see if we end up getting that. But a lot of great stuff coming out for Star Trek. So much fun to have. And if you're looking for new content, if you're like me and you've already read everything that has come out for Star Trek as far as like the comic books with IDW and the novelizations for Star Trek Discovery, and you never read the Shatnerverse, go read the Shatnerverse novels. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. They are everything you've ever wanted. They are so badass. Have a great time with those. And we'll reconvene and talk about the short treks and everything else. We'll have plenty to talk about over the next few months. And of course, season 2 of Star Trek Discovery will be starting in January 2019, and we'll be ready for that. And I'm sure as fucking hell ready. I think season 2 is going to be leaps and bounds better than season 1. Not that season 1 was bad. So anyway, that's it for your September Star Trek update 2018. We've got more episodes to come out. It's going to be another one of those situations where every day, pretty much, you're going to get an episode of Sovereign Tech as a patron or something for Sovereign Tech. Also, real quick, I just want to mention this again. If you have not signed up for your reward tiers on Patreon, whatever donation level you're at, if you're at $1, $5, or if you're going for one of the higher ones, make sure you click on those. You won't get charged. Okay, you won't get charged again for joining it, but if you don't join it, you won't get access to the exclusives that come with these reward tiers. I think as long as you stick through to the next month into October, it'll automatically put you in those reward tiers, but don't count on that. This is kind of new ground for me with Patreon, so I want to make sure that you get access to those. I put a post on Patreon about it, so you can go to patreon.com/sovereigntech if you want to read about it, figure out how to do it. And anyway, that's it for, your Star Trek update, September 2018. I will see all of you on the other side.